Gemma. Gemma, I thank Gemma today for handing it over to me like this, because she handed over a baton to us when Bata Pata had just started. And she did one workshop, and from there it was Stephen Garanganga, who was at the back there, Odiola Vuirno Sara, and myself, who kind of continued with Bata Pata. That was in 2003 up to, I think, 2005. That's when we did the last workshop. At that time, things were not easy at all, and as it goes with art activities, funding is not always easy. And at some point, you kind of think there's something else I'm not understanding about not being able to raise the money, really. We used to get a bit of money from for traveling grants from Ford Foundation, which would only mean that we would fund people who are coming into the country and nothing else. And Hivos would give a little bit for the materials. And then all the rest of the running around that goes on, you would have to deal with that yourself. So in most cases, Garanganga ended up on his bike, I ended up walking, Odiola ended up walking to get to offices, to get to places where we needed to get supplies and all that. It was indeed a lot of work. But when it happened, like 2003, the workshop happened, we were happy. Again, 2014, we couldn't do it because of funding and things just getting hard. 2005, we managed, barely managed, and we did another successful workshop. And from there, that was when things even got harder, and one kind of rethinks and reimagines how the situation can be dealt with. I'd taught art for quite a number of years at the Harare Polytechnic, at the University of Zimbabwe, and at Chinhoyi University of Technology. So I'd also understood the position that we were in terms of academia, and how these workshops were now fitting in as a way of propelling talent further. And my fear after analyzing the whole situation was that now we're jumping straight into the global and the so-called universal way of creating work without really realizing who we were as people, and without really analyzing what our culture, what we need to adopt from our culture and pull back in. I'll ask for the first slide. So I made a conscious to start something else that was not just on that international level of inviting artists from outside and having workshops, but something that will be more permanent. With Bata Pata, it was difficult or almost impossible to have a physical space. We used to operate from the internet cafe. Only when artists come on the ground, that's when we would book a space, a lodge where we would have workshops. But I felt like we needed a space that was more permanent, a space where artists could actually come in and have the necessary discussions, not once a year, but whenever we feel like making that happen. So that began Zimbanete Arts Interactions. So we basically started with the idea of workshops and on the visual arts. But ultimately, it was how do we get these workshops to encompass all the other aspects that are necessary for production of relevant artwork. You know, cultural relevance was needed in our works. So we proceeded with workshops, and the previous workshops with Bata Pata around the Triangle Trust Network had also helped us in understanding and connecting with other people. So by the time we started, I had been to Tulipangwe, where I had connected with Ndasunye Shikongeni, that young old man sitting over there. And I'd seen what they were doing there, and a technique that had become generic to Namibia, cardboard print. And we asked him to come in and run a cardboard print workshop for our local artists. You can flip the next slide. That was the last show of Bata Pata that we had here at the National Gallery. After we had invited artists, so you see a Zambian artist, an artist from Botswana, I think there were 2 Zambian artists there, an artist from Botswana, from South Africa, and Namibia as well. And next slide, please. So we continued with workshops, and some of our workshops have gone on to bring in people from as far as Detroit in the USA. Detroit University partnered with Chinhoyi University of Technology, and they wanted a residency at Dzimbanete. So this, what you see here, is a student from Detroit and a student from CAT doing a screen printing workshop at Dzimbanete. Next slide, please. Among some of the workshops we've done and residencies, we've hosted an artist from Guadeloupe, for example, Eddie Finn, who came in on a fiberglass workshop, which was one of the things we're following up as our ideals, to equip artists with some of that technique you don't find in a school, in a college. We also had a residency with Katinka Tabakaru Gallery, which has become like our partner in all the developments that are happening. We went into understanding as well that the production of art needs to be fed by something. Understanding that in most colleges, schools and universities, not just in Zimbabwe, but I think the world over, what is termed art history is simply European art history. It's rare to find African art history being taught properly, particularly here on the ground. Outside in the West now you have African studies and things like that, but here we're still like saying art history, and we're dwelling on European art history. So the idea was, how do we find our other relevant information, our other stories, to make these young artists and these mid-career artists kind of appreciate their culture and know where their stories are. One of the art forms that has not really transformed a lot is in Zimbabwe is Mbira music. Mbira music has been around for thousands of years. The lyrics, the stories, the instrument itself has been around for quite a number of years. So we brought in Mbira music because we say there is a narrative in Mbira, there is that understanding in Mbira, there is that composition, and say probably something that doesn't go along the so-called normal or Eurocentric beat. So we brought in Mbira and we started working with Mbira musicians. Some of the people became Dzimbanete team, and from there again workshops started happening. People would come to Dzimbanete, people still come to Dzimbanete to learn Mbira music. All we do is we connect them to a mentor. Next slide, please. We have also become a hub over time. That Mbira music thing, it's like Dzimbanete is like an art form on its own. It keeps evolving. So whenever we catch on to something and it looks interesting, we kind of pursue it. So we've held lots of concerts in Mbira music, and we have also dug into Mbira as well as a form of research to find out how Mbira came to be. One of the researches led to a concert we had which was called Seven Ancient Voices, where we realized the tunes in Mbira music are actually pegs in our migratory history. Every tune is actually a mark of where we came from and what had happened at that particular time up until now. We started with 7, but with our research we realized there were actually 9 tunes that lead up to this very day. Okay, we'll just rush through the slides because I hear time is up. So the Mbira music led to what we call Mbira Sunsplash, a concert we had with 30 groups that played for 36 hours. And that was a marking point of us really engaging the community of Mbira, whereby now even the ministry that deals with culture and rural development, they now come to Dzimbanete as sort of an authority that can bring the Mbira music and artists together. Next slide, please. This is work based on a research project that we did. Again, as a way of informing artists about certain aspects of the culture, we went into researching on taboos. Taboos are an essential part of our life as Zimbabweans. Say from my home where I come from, the Karanga people, taboos are very important, and taboos, when you look at them, they look like equations for life, really. You're told not to do something because it has a certain consequence, so it's about cause and effect. So out of that Taboos and Legends workshop, Terence Msekiwa here is hanging that he had done along a story of the Rosy Empire. Next piece, please. That's the 7 ancient voices. Next piece. We also had the Mbira exhibition itself, kind of to get the craft that has been groomed for so long. All we hear is the music, we never get to see the Mbira makers themselves showing. So we had an exhibition of Mbira instruments, including one that was made of wood. Next slide, please. Now we come to the what has become our main project. After we built up this Mbira and art, we went on to then say, why don't we do a festival of African culture? Kind of adopting that which happened in Senegal and in Nigeria. And we said, well, if it's going to happen, instead of having tent pavilions, why don't we build a village, which would be each country's pavilion? So that then gave birth to this idea of an all-Africa village. Here you see some construction pictures. Those who visited Zimbanete saw these structures when they were finished. Next slide, please. That's the building. What has happened is we've also proven that art culture can actually employ people. These people get jobs when we build these structures, and that farming community around us is actually relied on Zimbanete now for jobs. And for us, it's a way of also saying once this thing is functional, art and culture can actually fund itself in a way. Next slide, please. That's the construction going on at that time. Next slide. This is a poster that we have out there if people need to have this African or Africa village with them. This is the design of what we are now working on, building the All Africa Village. Sort of a celebration for the architecture and architecture that we never really studied in school when we were studying art, and architecture that's not really celebrated. But by bringing it forth, we're actually kind of standardizing it and also making it a bit more easy and accessible for people. Next slide, please. That's the partnership we had with Katinka Tabakaro Gallery that has seen this building come up. It's a gallery, a new gallery at our new site. A gallery where Terence Msekiwa and Justin Orvistein are showing their pieces today. Next slide, please. It's just about 25 kilometers from Harare, so it's quite accessible. Next slide. Thank you very much.